now 6:01 PM on July 31st, 2017. It's time to call this workshop special call meeting of the Board of Trustees of San Felipe Del Rio CISD to order. Mr. Messer, would you call roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Smith?
Present.
Mr. Chavita?
Here.
Amy Haynes?
Here.
Yours truly is here. Ms. Gonzalez?
Here.
We have five absent.
So we have a quorum, thank you. Let the record show that a quorum of the board members are present, and this meeting has been duly called, and notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code CH 551. At this time, if you would please stand for the opening ceremonies. First, a moment of silence, followed by the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we're on the review school board workshop. Dr. Rios will guide us through.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Haynes, members of the board. I'm going to ask Sandra to come up to the front and just help us go through the PowerPoint. Different members of the cabinet will guide us through, but Sandra's going to help us navigate. Over the course of this workshop, we're going to review the energy and sustainability plan that we presented the last time we had a facilities workshop. We're going to go back and look at some changes that we did to the long-term operations and the technology maintenance. And then hopefully we're going to spend a good time presenting the elementary and middle school redesign plan, some studies that we want to do with the architects, as well as a grant that we applied for. Whether we get the grant or not, it allowed us the opportunity to really plan what it is that we need to do if we want to have an effective middle school and elementary redesign. I'll begin the presentation, and I'm going to speak from here if it's okay with y'all. Go ahead, Sandra. This is a timeline that we want to follow. We posted the RFQ on July 27th. The deadline for the middle will be August 23rd, and then there'll be review between the 23rd and 25th. To review the RFQ, just to make sure that nobody says that we picked a favorite or that there was any lack of transparency, we asked our partners in San Antonio, the architect firms, to do the review process for us. And that way they would use the set criteria and make the selection. We have a scheduled public hearing for our budget on the 28th. At that time, we want to present the winner of the RFQ for your approval, and then negotiate with them between August 29th and 31st and begin that whole process. So we look forward to being able to do some improvements to our energy efficiency through this type of process. So as mentioned, Mr. Henke and Mr. Carrera will sit down with Kissling Architects and Bain Architects in San Antonio. They're going to look at the following criteria. The business qualifications of each one of the entities, their financial information. Because it's an RFQ, a request for qualifications, and not an RFP, we're not allowed to select a dollar value to the district. Their participants, the personnel they have, how they'll manage the project, and how much experience. We did add an addendum. We've reviewed this with some of our critical allies to see what they think of the RFQ process. And one of them suggested that we ask each of the participants to let the district know how often or when they have been sued or sued someone in the last 5 years through this process. And then I visited with Mr. Shulman. He said that was highly appropriate and encouraged us to do that. So he'll also help us review that piece. The scoring criteria can be found on the ESCO webpage. So
they actually have a copy that was provided to them by Mr. Carrera has a copy for them.
Next slide. These are the individuals that have come to the district and already done an extensive walkthrough. The companies were called E3, Schneider Electric, ABM, and the last one was McKinstry. So we can, at a minimum, expect, requests for qualifications provided by each one of the threes. Now, to update us on the long-term operations of, the maintenance technology plan, I'm gonna ask, before we go there, let me ask, Ms. Haynes and the board members, we had the presentation from Snyder Electric last time. They did the presentation, they helped us just to make sure everybody was aware of it, and we set a timeline of moving forward. Are there any questions on the RFQ process? This was just an update, but we intend to move forward with it and bring one for your approval. Are there any questions that we can either answer tonight or research for y'all? We really want to be prepared to move forward on the 28th.
The 4 companies there will make presentations to you on that?
No, they will submit all the paperwork that's required as part of the RFQ. They each made a presentation to us,
Yes.
and I shared with them that really we'll entertain your presentation. It'll help us learn more about this type of contract, or the performance contract. But I made it clear to them, it's not gonna be us that makes the selection, for 2 reasons. One, they pretty much all offer the same program. It's a savings to the district in energy that then we can turn around and pay whatever note we take out to implement new lighting, new water measures, restriction measures, all these things. They all do business in Texas and across the country using this plan. So if we pick them ourselves, it puts us in a situation where someone can criticize us. So we'd rather be separate and apart from it. So they'll submit it to the architects, submit it to us, the architects will review it. But they all offer the same thing. They will not be making any more presentations to the architects. It's just what's on paper.
Essentially what each one of them is going to do is they're going to go through and analyze the different buildings and come up with a list of improvement ideas and then propose replacement upgrade of those improvement ideas. And so this process is just selecting that person that's going to do that. The rest of them are out.
Yes, sir.
And in that, this analysis, the way I understood it up front is that we would go in and we'd say we're going to spend $5 million. They would be, in charge of spending that $5 million. And they get a piece of that, right?
Yes.
And so in the analysis, you'll determine, is that a set number through the state, or is it, or every one of them is different? One will be 14%, and one will be 14.5%, or how does it?
No, it's the number that we negotiate. It's already, and it'll be built in to the contract. But because it is a performance contract, they're only allowed to charge X amount of dollars by the state. Now, they're gonna give us a whole menu of.
So it's regulated by the state.
Yes, sir.
And so when it becomes an action item inside the agenda for us to vote on, that selection's already made, or we're gonna determine which one.
Two things are gonna happen, Mr. Smith. Thank you for asking. You're gonna approve the contract. And then, if you remember, we changed the construction process by where y'all approve different phases of it. And this is gonna be no different. We're gonna bring back each piece for the board to approve, every step of the way. We're not gonna say, okay, the board approved y'all, so now the superintendent and the operations officer are gonna select what pieces of the 10 million. Now, we're gonna engage the board in at least 2 more presentations. It may be just during the board meeting, or it may be during the workshop. I'll work with Mr. Overfeld to decide how we're gonna do it. But the board will have least 2 more processes after these to approve. So on that day, you're only gonna approve, our recommendation, for who the contractor is gonna be. Then we're gonna come back and you're gonna have to approve, what we call a schematic design program. You're also gonna have to approve, the bonds that we have to borrow to do these projects. And then after that, when they finally do the whole, their whole, what we call construction documents, you have to approve those as well. So it'll be a process.
And the ultimate goal is for them to save us a guaranteed amount of money.
Yes, sir.
And then that math that calculates how much they save, how is that done? Who validates that?
They have to have an engineer that's part of the process. That's the first step. The second step is that they have to save us that amount of money or they're responsible to cut us a check.
Yep. So the math at the end of the day is, as we all know, our electric bills fluctuate just by default. And so how do you take out all the noise and normalize that to where you're talking apples and apples? And who's responsible for that? They are, we are.
Both, but they won't measure the cost of the watt, for example, rather than the amount used. And the idea is to decrease it. They will measure the cost of the gallons of water rather than the number of the gallons of water that was used.
Yep.
So it can be very easily validated that way. Well, yeah, a lot of work.
Well, it's still elusive. I mean, and that's the point that I'm trying to make. This, today we're 105 and in some July timeframes it's 80. And so obviously it's going to be cheaper to run for HVAC as well. See, that's why to normalize all that's difficult to do.
I don't remember exactly, but those people that make the presentation told us as to the formula sort of. But from a business point of view, is that, so they're gonna charge us like a certain percentage of their equipment that they'll be using, their manpower that they'll be using, and then whatever percentage is regulated by the state, and then they give us the difference.
Yeah, they're gonna do the study, and they're gonna determine, everything that needs to happen. And in it, the cost of manpower and the oversight of the project, all that's gonna be included. Really wish I had those figures off the top of my head, but I'll have, Mr. Carrera or Mr. Henge pull those down from the web and provide them hopefully with this Friday's update so we can see each part where we pay them. But all of it goes into the overall cost, and all of that has to be covered by how much energy is served.
Yeah, and the reason I'm asking is, we're saying is that it's gotta be a certain formula, that's, all those things, then of course they profit. And they total it up and then they subtract it from, gifts. I sure would like to see.
Sure, we'll provide, make a note.
Yes.
No, I'm confident that it'll work. It's just a big math equation. That's the quick one.
Yeah, I think so. I think just from the fact that they guarantee us a profit, or whether, what difference, which is our profit, I think it's gonna work. The only reason that I would like to see it is that, I'm sure that all of them we are asking, I don't wanna say, well, I don't know. Like to have an idea as to how it's worked out and be able to discuss it.
In the past, the district has always held that, we know that we need to switch lights at certain campuses. We know that we need to switch certain controls. But the reality is that we don't have the manpower to carry on all of these changes. And that's at the end of the day, the oversight of the program, the management of the energy efficiency throughout, and that's what they're providing, which is another piece where they also make their profit. Because not only will we implement the recommendations that we both agree to, they'll also have an ongoing contract to monitor the energy efficiency. Now, we don't have to have an ongoing contract with them, but for the first few years, it'll be important so that we can make sure that there's some direct oversight into it, that somebody is actively managing it, and that cost also comes from the savings. I think Mr. Cabrera is next.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Rios. Well, the last time we had our workshop, we had myself and Mr. Sheedy present the fleet management and the buses. We had HVAC, and we had all those, and if you remember correctly, on the front end, we had a lot of, it was heavy on the front end because we hadn't done this in a long time. Now, the one that brings to mind right now is the buses. We had like maybe 10 or 15 buses that we needed to purchase this year in order to catch up. And so what this next, the next PowerPoint, let's see, move it, Sandra.
Is it on the next slide?
There it is. This is what we've come up with, all those things, the HVAC, buses, the fleet, the paving, the interior and exterior painting, and it's come up, if you read it across, it's from the HVAC and then all the way across. In order to do what we wanted to do in that PowerPoint we presented at that time would be the $720,000, around there, and $400. So the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be somewhere in the $700,000-800,000 range is what we came up with. And what we did is we took all those ones that we had on that other previous PowerPoint, we took those numbers and tried to even them out throughout the years. And some were 10, some were 15 years. And so that's what we've done here for this presentation. Any questions on this?
Well, to connect the two dots, I would assume that a lot of that HVAC would fall into what we just went through.
Yes, sir. And that's one thing that I'm glad that you brought up is that HVAC, what's not on there, the HVAC consists of just top units, not chillers. Like the chiller at the high school and the chiller at the middle school, those would be even larger sums there. And we didn't include them as just rooftops.
So part of that $8.5 million, what I'm getting at would be inside these proposals built in there.
Oh,
We have to wait for them to do their audit, and then we decide what we want to improve. But it is a very strong possibility that some of what we've added in there would automatically fall into one of those recommendations. So yes, sir. The other piece to note here is that what's listed on there, the $720,000, for example, in the past, we've always budgeted for that from what we call carryover money, where we just over budgeted, and what's left over at the end of the year, we decide, okay, what is it that we need? But here in the last 4 years, what we've done is we've run a much tighter budget in saying, okay, this is how much money we expect, and this is how much we're gonna spend. There hasn't been too much over budgeting to then create excess money at the end of the year. This year, for example, what we expect to be left over in the budget is a little bit over $600,000 in favorability. That is a considerable decrease from the past. I think the first year I got here, there was probably $5 million in favorability with excess positions, excess costs that were budgeted in, costs that we really never expected to happen. So every year we narrowed it down, and we're at that point now where this is about as close as we're gonna get. The only problem is that having $600,000 left over, usually we leave about $500,000 in reserves just to keep growing that savings, at least that's what we've done the last few years, well, that would only leave me about $220,000 to spend. Right off the bat, that isn't even enough to cover the facilities piece. We still have the technology piece to cover. So as we move forward with the budget process, we have to include this amount of money every year in the budget, which means that we have to be ready to make some serious decisions as to where we're gonna cut to provide for some of these items.
I have a question at this point. I had requested some information regarding transportation, and that was the amount that was spent on charter buses.
Yes, sir. I have that information. Unfortunately, when I went to go do the update, I didn't have the data file, but, I kinda can share it with you already. It'll go on this Friday's update, but she already has that information.
Any other questions? Go to the next slide. Okay, here's our budget, operating budget for operations for the last 3 years. And this only includes what you see here. It does not include what you saw on the previous slide. So this only includes these items here. So what you saw on the other prior slide is not included in here. So you can see it's ran about 5 million in the last 3 years.
Facilities maintenance is kind of what you're talking about over there.
Yes, sir.
And so you're talking about roughly $1.5 million for increasing from 500 to $1.5 million in the maintenance category. If I understand that right.
It also includes transportation, so it won't all be in the facilities maintenance, but most of it will be in the facilities maintenance.
Okay.
Now, when you get back to what Mr. Mesa just got through asking about the buses, if we're going to try to get some information, we need the information also that includes the wear and tear that is going to have, the scheduling that the school buses that is being utilized and the weight and all that kind of thing. So once you make it, and I'm sure that the reason that Ms. Reyes is saying is, we're asking about the cost of the charter buses, it's because maybe we can do with, if we do, what is it gonna do to our facilities as well, under our transportation department? Because we're still gonna spend a lot of money. And I sure would like to, if we're gonna do away with it or even think about it, I would like to see the balance. You understand what I'm saying? In other words,
Yes, sir.
if we use the yellow buses, it's gonna cost us some money. How much money are we saving? And how much problems are we gonna have? The wear and tear of the yellow buses, the scheduling the bus drivers, all that type of thing.
The biggest concern, Mr. Chavira, on doing away with charter buses, there's obviously some pros and cons. Because when we don't use charter buses, that means that our own employees get some of these out-of-town trips. And because they don't make so much money, allowing them the opportunity to make overtime is beneficial to them. So that's a good thing, because they obviously stay with us longer when they're making more money. But the biggest worry is that when we use local buses, then we end up doubling routes in the afternoons.
That's what I'm saying.
So kids have to wait longer to get picked up and get taken home. And that happens too often, and then we decrease the service that we're giving to the students. And on the one hand, we're helping the bus drivers, but on the other hand, we're just having kids wait 2 hours before they even get on a bus, which means they get home 2 hours later. And then that causes a lot of concern from the parents, even though we notify them ahead of time saying, hey, on Friday, we can have as much as 10 buses go to Laredo. And they all leave 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's just, there is a wear and tear on the buses. It isn't so significant that it makes us replace a bus, 5 years in advance. It doesn't make us replace that bus earlier, but a year or so. But it's that just terrible customer service that we give.
So there's a lot of things that we need to consider,
Yes, sir.
because there's a lot of variables in there that we need to look at it as to the expenses, the timing element, picking up the kids, problems that are going, it's answered.
What kind of liability does the contract bus company inherit when they take their kids offsite?
I'd have to check. I would assume that they inherit all liability, but I'll have to have you on a county check.
Yeah, that's a humongous advantage to us.
May I interject something? And the angle that I'm coming from has nothing to do with the yellow
No,
buses.
I'm not
Yeah.
criticizing, I'm just saying that we need,
No, I'm not being critical, I'm saying, what I'm looking at is if it's feasible to purchase an activity bus for our use instead of getting charter buses, because we keep paying that money every year, and it's a substantial amount that we could afford, an activity bus. We're dishing out a lot too much money.
yeah, and I think the yellow buses can be equipped to operate similar to,
Mr. Carrera obtained for us quotes on yellow buses, and the last conversation that I had with them, Mr. Sheedy, was, look, we can't buy all 7 charter buses up once, but maybe we can have a plan where we buy one every year, and then eventually build up the fleet to where we don't have to rent them anymore, and as long as we have drivers, then they can drive them, our own drivers can drive the charter buses, and we can save on that. But it's something that we have to figure out how that weighs in, because the last time we checked on the cost of the charter bus, what was it?
About 900,000.
It was way up there, so, and obviously that was one with a lot of bells and whistles.
but you say buy a charter bus similar to, not,
We own it, we maintain it, we park
what I'm
it,
saying is, not a yellow bus type of thing.
no, a charter bus.
Because I've seen yellow buses with seats that recline and everything.
This one.
I mean, I wonder how much the difference would be.
We'll look at it.
into it.
We'll look into it.
Because buses are air conditioned anyway. And the difference is that we use our local, like you were saying, our drivers. And at the same time, I'm just looking at the comfort of the kids. It's a long way, and then having to come up here and then they're tired and they don't show up for classes and this type of thing. So it's a lot of things that we need to consider. And I'm glad it's been, we're discussing, because if there's a way to improve our transportation and save money, they just get with it. Thank you.
And I apologize, it's not 900, it's 90,000, around $90,000 is what we saw, 90,000. Okay. This is up.
Mr. Henry will take the next part of the presentation.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Rios. Just wanted to go a little bit further into detail on the last presentation in regards to the technology budget, where we've been projected sustainability costs as well as current operational budget that we're proposing for this upcoming school year. So back in 2014-15, we were looking at a $1.1 million a year budget. And then we saw an increase because of equipment getting old over a period of time. And so we had significant investment here to be able to get all that equipment up to date. The costs started coming back down. I was sure to include the committed funds that we used in conjunction with the general budget. As we move forward, we're trying to not have that committed funds there now. We're trying to include it in a regular general budget that we can count on. So the upcoming school year, we're looking at 1.3 million, which is, last year was 1.4. So we are starting to go down a little bit now, but now we're trying to look at how we can save money long-term. Not adding a lot of devices to the network unless there's, justification for doing so. Possibly engaging in long-term maintenance plans so we can save percentage-wise. If the equipment's gonna be here for 5 years, we should do a 5-year maintenance on it. We can save about 25 to 35%. Rather than what we're doing right now, which is every year we're doing it, and we're not seeing that percentage savings. So, next slide, please. This is a recap on the device refresh that we're looking at. So for a 4-year rotation, the cost that we need to come up with is around $904,000 extra per year. That's in addition to the 1.3 that we've submitted for this year. Now, currently, pretty much all the devices on the network are under warranty. This is the critical year that we need to make the decision how we're going to sustain this. We won't be replacing these devices this year because they're still under warranty, but after this school year, things start falling out of warranty again. So what we're looking at is how can we stretch the dollar further this upcoming school year, excuse me, to be able to bring that cost down. So, next slide. What we've done is we've taken the proposed budget of 1.3 million. Printers and computers are 120,000 that we budget for. Annual renewals and maintenance, 480,000. That's where we would be able to see our 25, 35% savings if we did a multi-year maintenance, because this is a recurring expense. We're always going to have it. So we are looking at trying to save some there. Our emergency operations, 120,000. Daily operations, 394,000. This upcoming year, we do have a phone system that we need severely to upgrade. Right now, we're not able to make really any changes on the phone system because it's so far out of date. We did it over spring break and we broke about 300 phones throughout the district. So then we backed that change off to get the phones back. Those phones have to be changed, so new phones that we get will not work on the current system that we have until we upgrade. So in my mind, this is an automatic, we have to do that. And then of course, phase 3 of the E-rate project is replacing the firewalls. To date, we've replaced all the switches throughout the district. We started deploying wireless district-wide today. That should be completed next week. So we're anticipating all these changes will be made before first day of school. The firewall replacement, we would probably do sometime over Christmas break. And then at that point, everything's been replaced. But as you can see on a $1.3 million budget, everything's accounted for. So what I have done is I've gone through and ran some numbers on the one-time purchases that we have here of 195,000, taking that plus the 120,000. That's going to give us about 315,000 out of the next year's budget that we can put towards the PC refresh. If we do that, we're still short about $589,000. So I'm working it. I'm working the numbers, trying to make this happen as much as we can. That's not taking into account any grants or any other sources of funds that are coming in. This is just taking what we have and making the best of it. Questions, concerns?
Yes.
Yes.
I do have one. For past years, all these upgrades, the start of the year, it's always been historical that the labs, were not working, and so teachers were upset because 6 weeks into the school year, they still were not. So you can guarantee that everything is up and running with all these upgrades.
I guarantee it's going to be better than anything this district's seen in the past. We started communication, real good communication with all the campus administrators this summer. They were aware of all the changes that were going on. And the latest word has been that the custodians are pretty much done with the floors as of today. So we've been communicating with them as well because of course they have floors to wax and that puts us behind schedule. But we do have a team out there right now that's been doing reconnects and they're doing about 1 campus a day. There's some challenges. I mean, some of these rooms, we don't know how the teachers are gonna want them. And every year when they come back, they wanna change where their desk goes and things like that. So we're gonna meet those, requests and take care of them. But right now, I'm trying to get it about 95% accurate. If I can get that up, I'm happy.
And credit to you because it's improved a whole lot.
I appreciate that.
But, since you've been on board, I just wanna make sure that, the labs, because that's one thing that everybody looks forward to make sure that from day one, they start utilizing all technology.
We're working very hard on that. I'm trying to get it to where we're not interrupting instruction. So text would be going out to classrooms as much as possible. I mean, there's gonna be exceptions. But after school lets out is when the work would be getting done. Weekends, obviously the summertime. We are, as much as we can, we are doing all the upgrades over the summer. So there shouldn't be upgrades going on throughout the school year like what we've seen in the past, because it's very disruptive.
And I'm so glad that you're starting way early because it's still early. It's approaching, but it's still, before it seemed like we waited just the last minute, to do upgrades and somehow it messed things up for teachers.
We're about 3 weeks early right now from the last 2 years.
Good.
So I've really seen significant improvement
Thank you.
in the department, so. But we'll continue to strive for that 100%.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hold on, before you go into the next slide. So after this operations workshop, when we come back to adopt the budget, we're gonna present some numbers. And obviously, there's gonna be some give and take here within the departments because there's fixed dollars that we're expecting and the expenses aren't necessarily fixed. So that way, when we share with y'all that we made this decision to reduce on the amount of painting or reduce the number of purchase of buses, et cetera, you'll have some insight into what it is that we're talking about reducing, and then can provide your own input and recommendations based on the information that we provided. So we hope all of us will be more informed when it comes time to adopt the final budget. All right, the next part, the last part of the workshop, we want to talk about the elementary and middle school redesign. First, we want to share with you all the need, why we feel this is the most important thing that the district has left to address. Talk about feasibility schematic design for Old Garfield and Cartwell and how that fits in the program. And then talk about a redesign grant that we applied for. We don't know if we're gonna get it, but like I said earlier, whether we get it or not, the process of applying for the grant was very healthy because it allowed us to really plan out how this redesign project would work out. And those two things just happened all at once. We didn't talk about redesign because we thought there might be a grant. We talked about redesign because of the huge need that we have. Let's go forward, Senator. Obviously, the need for redesigning the middle school experience has to do with numbers. Redesigning the elementary experience also has to do with numbers and growth. I shared with the board about a month ago, or maybe a month and a half ago, a lot of research, and this is just some research that talks about the difference that class size makes. But before I go into that, I'll just remind everybody, our middle school sits at about 1,600 students. It is by far the largest middle school in the entire state. There isn't another middle school that big. It's just too big. At the time, it might have made financial sense to build it, but it doesn't make instructional sense, especially when we consider the difference in achievement becomes visible when class size is reduced, by 20 students. No more than 18 students required to produce the greatest benefits. Minority and low-income students showing greater gains when placed in small class sizes. So certainly by having a smaller school, that facilitates having smaller classrooms as well, but it's a smaller experience. And there's a whole lot of research that has to do with the small schools. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, I'll mention two in a minute. So, what we're proposing is repurposing the San Felipe Memorial Middle School into a middle school STEM magnet for 7th and 8th grade students. And then Del Rio Middle School will reduce the population by about 600 students, because we'll take about 600 students from Del Rio Middle School, and then they'll apply and be admitted to the magnet. Having a middle school of 1,000 students is significantly a much better learning environment than it is what we have now. What we have right now, anything that happens at Del Rio Middle School, where it's a simple experience at an elementary school, it becomes chaotic at the middle school just because of the sheer numbers. Whether it's evacuating the building, or whether it's responding to any student disturbance, or a fire drill, anything that we do, changing classes, lunches, it's just chaotic because it's so big. And it's such a distraction from the teaching and learning. So reducing it by 600 students would be incredible. Go ahead, Sam. So here's what we plan on doing. To be able to repurpose San Felipe Memorial Middle School into STEM magnet, we have to reintegrate our 6th grade students into the elementary. We talked about this in the past when we talked about the bond election, and there's some differences, but we would still have 4 attendance zones. Each attendance zone would have 2 elementary schools that serve kids K through 3rd grade and then 4th through 6th grade. If we look at the elementary zone to the north, that's an important one. It's going to be Lonnie Green and Buena Vista. Lonnie Green will serve students K through 3rd grade. Why? Well, because it's a larger campus. And then Buena Vista will serve 3 grades, 4th, 5th, and 6th. In that configuration, what's so important is that that allows for growth of 300 students to the north. And what do I mean by the north? I'm talking about the 4-way stop sign. I always forget the name of the street. 4-way stop sign right north of Early College High School. Mary Lou. From Mary Lou all the way to the lake. When we work with a demographer, that will allow, we can take all the students from Mary Lou to the north, zone them into those 2 schools, and we will have room to grow by 300 students in those 2 campuses. That's very significant. Then the north central zone will be North Heights and Cardwell. Cardwell is the old East Side campus. What we would be doing is just returning East Side to a regular elementary campus, and Garfield and Lamar, Calderon and Ruben Chavira. These numbers have already been worked through our demographer. He'll have to make some changes based on the fact that we're not building the school to the north, we're repurposing the school in the center of town. The other piece that's very important as we look at repurposing Cardwell to East Side, and what name we end up calling it is to be determined, but putting it back to East Side, is that as we look at the work of the demographer, the most populated area is still the center of Del Rio. Yes, there is room to grow to the north, and there is consistent growth. That's why allowing for 300 students to the north is important, but the heaviest population is still in the center of town. Go for the next slide, Senator. So then, since we're repurposing Cardwell, and so 4th through 6th setting, we're looking at Old Garfield campus, who's been closed for a while, to repurpose it to accommodate the early childhood setting. There's a whole lot of positive things about Garfield. Yes, it is an old building, but for the most part, the classrooms are enclosed under one roof. And the distance to the next classrooms is not very far. Those of you that are familiar from Garfield, you know that from going to the main building to the wing in the back is not very far. I mean, we're talking about 10, 15 yards. The other significant part about Garfield is that before it was closed, the district spent a whole lot of money remodeling the cafeteria. And then the final thing that I would say about Garfield is that it's got a whole lot of playground in the back, whether we want to expand parking or build playgrounds for the students. There's just a whole lot of room over there. That's it. So then, what is it that we can do to put this plan in motion? What we wanna do is again have an RFQ for an architect. About 25,000 to do the whole schematic design for Garfield and the whole schematic design for Cardwell, on the repurposing. If we're serious about moving in that direction, the architect selected would then subtract the $50,000 from the overall architect costs that they would be earning by doing the project. And what I shared with some architects that would be interested in bidding in the project is that we would pay them the same percentage that we paid for the redesign of this building. Whatever percentage we paid on this building, that's the percentage that we would pay on those other buildings. So in fact, we could subtract the cost of the $50,000 for the schematic design from that final amount that we pay them if we would move forward with the project. The other piece, and it's what we'll talk about next, is that we can also bill those $50,000 to the grant should we get the grant that we applied for. We work the fees in there. We talked about this before, but I want to bring it for action to the board either in August, at the August regular board meeting, and wait till September if we have. But I wanted to allow us the time to make this presentation and then see what kind of questions we need to answer for you all before we get to that point. So before we talk about the grant, I'd like to see what questions you have on this project.
So the timeline would be the following year or 2 years?
Yeah, no, 2 years. So it would take us a whole year to plan it out, or most of the year to plan it out, and then the second year for the construction and staff development. And that's the second part of the presentation. That was going smoothly.
And the other question would it be possible to, we have done, for example, at Cardwell, a lot of improvements, restrooms and so forth, but they're for 4-year-olds. And so would that be still possibly utilized somewhere else and save us some money? Everything from furniture and things of that sort.
Yes, sir. The furniture that's usable obviously will be moved over to the new site. When we talk about the commodes and that sort of stuff, I couldn't answer that. I have to have the architect answer it because obviously they're built for 4-year-olds, so they have to be raised a little bit. And I don't know how usable they would be, but I would assume that the newer ones are definitely usable. The construction of the new restroom facilities that we built there, the library that was built and the science wing that was built, all that is absolutely usable and can be part of the savings.
Because, when you start thinking about it, everything from the dining hall, cafeteria, and everything else, even nurses' office and so forth. Another question, when you separate students, let's say brother, sister, would it be possible to still have all of these services like physical therapy and scheduled into these campuses? Because it seems like we're gonna be adding some additional, Garfield, for example. And we're still having San Felipe there, so we're gonna be, in essence, we're gonna be adding another campus. All of that has to be looked at, because whether it's cafeteria personnel, custodial, all of that has to be looked at in reference to numbers. And not only that, services that are provided, which would be transportation, as I mentioned, physical therapy, speech.
All of that, Mr. Mesa, is worked into the grant in terms of planning for that. When IDA presents the grant, you'll see that there's room in there to study the transportation routes, the distribution personnel, the staff development, all of that is included in that grant. Now, in terms of specific personnel costs, we obviously don't have that broken down to the penny, but we definitely have that as part of the plan to study. The other piece that I think is also important, and I wish there was a way to quantify it, is that in making this type of distribution, we know that we're gonna gain students in the district that right now leave the district because of size. So even though there will be some added expenses for a new campus, there'll also be an increased number of students that'll help offset that through the added ADA.
So what is the timeline for the grant?
We'll know next month. We'll know, it's in the presentation, I think, middle of August. Here in about 2 to 3 weeks, we're gonna find out.
So, how do you quantify the value of a grant, of this grant?
The 1.5 million?
Yeah, what, how does that, how do you create that number? Is that something based on the size, what constitutes that number?
Well, the state allowed us to apply for anything from $500,000 to 1.5 million. So in planning out what we would need, we obviously try to maximize the application and try to incorporate everything that we know we're gonna need. Now granted, they may not fund all of it. They may come back and say, hey, we reviewed your grant, it's definitely worth funding, but we're only gonna fund 1.2 million.
And I guess maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. This is enormously complex, and I don't know that there's enough detailed information to say, yeah, this may cost us something. What we will all agree on is that the administrator is overcrowded. Everything beyond that is, I guess, a proposal, but that's about all it is, right? I'm sure you've done some homework, but
Right.
I mean, for me to sit here and say, yeah, this is thumbs up, everything's cool, and I love the idea, it's pretty far-fetched for me to do that based on what's been provided, so, do I know there's a need? Absolutely, I know there's a need. And so, you're asking for us to think about committing to a $50,000 expense that we don't even know if the plan is the way that we think it should go. That's just me talking, this meeting, maybe saying something. I don't know, but wow, it's a huge, humongous, complex activity we're talking about. So, is there a way to simplify that? I don't know. To get myself convinced that
Mr. Smith, in the past, I've presented demographic studies about where the population is right now in the city, and how they would fit into these 4 attendance zones for the elementary. So we know that part works. If I was to study every detail and have it all planned out, well, that's what the grant piece is for, the 1.5 million. The distribution of students will work, the distribution of staff will work. The only thing that I can't guarantee is that the students that currently leave our district to go to Brackett or Comstock are not gonna do that anymore, or to the charter schools. But I know, we all know, from talking to parents and listening to concerns, that it's the large number, we lose our students beginning the 6th grade year when they go.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that, I agree with that.
So, as we look forward to bringing this for
The proper solution, I guess, is the next question. Is this proposal the proper solution? Geez, this is pretty huge, and just logistics for parents. That changes quite a bit. How much, what's the difference in transportation? Is it gonna I don't know, I'm just saying it's pretty complex. Don't have a solution. But,
We've been through a lot of scenario discussions, including with parents, when we talk to them about how much time, transportation is one thing, the other part is how much do parents spend on a vehicle when they're taking their child to school? And what we asked parents to consider was, okay, how much time do you spend taking your child from where you live all the way to the 6th grade? So we're reducing that significantly. How much time do you spend in line when you take your child to the 7th and 8th grade campus, just because of the sheer traffic that's there? Now, I don't have that quantified for you now, and it's not acceptable for me to just say, well, common sense says, you know, that it's gonna be a one-for-one. It's gonna be a quid pro quo on the mileage, because we're distributing students to not so far away places. I see what you're saying, but I think that we need the opportunity to study this more, and to make it work within the budgets that we have.
so what's the budget that we have? What are we, you're not gonna be able to do all this with $1.5 million, so what are we talking about?
Just the study, absolutely, we will be able to do it.
Yeah, beyond that, you have no clue.
Beyond that, I'm not saying I have no clue, it's kind of harsh, but
Yeah, maybe, I didn't mean it that way. So 20 million, 15 million, 10 million?
are you talking about for the construction?
For, after you redistribute all of this, the construction and revamping, what are we talking?
An added cost to the budget and reoccurring added cost?
Not reoccurring, I'm talking about upfront costs just to make it happen, because if you're gonna hire somebody to come and do schematics, you're gonna do serious construction and then.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
In talking with the architects, and obviously I can't hold them down to the dollar, but in talking to various architects, saying, okay, how much do you think it would cost to retrofit the school to do this? You know, the cost that they've given me is that we can do it, Old Garfield can do it anywhere between 5 and 7 million, depending on how nice you wanna make it.
Okay.
And then at Cardwell,
Well,
what we talked about was building a main wing in the front to change the front of the school from the back to where it's at right now. So they did the cost of the square footage for that one wing, and the retrofitting of the rest. And that one is probably, they said it would probably be a little bit more because of the added construction and the retrofitting. But that one, they said, you know, we could do that between 6 and 8 million, again, depending on how much you wanna spend. So we
and
have.
how much on the retrofit of the old 6th grade?
There are some things that would be nice to have on that one, mainly an expanded cafeteria, but that's just nice to have. That campus is ready to go to be a middle school magnet as is.
Okay, so you're talking 11, 12 million bucks, up now. And Cardwell thing needs done anyway, Garfield can sit there and mothball forever, so you're really talking about $5 to $8 million. If you let things status quo. And then there's still some questions about how to deal with sports and band and all that. We have some, those, what would be coming up in the magnet school? How does that get expanded? Or expanded? How does that work?
In visiting with the athletic director, we would expand the sports to both campuses. There is an issue with football because we have to transport kids for practices. So we'd have to figure out what we do there at the magnet school, or do we bus the kids to practice somewhere else where there's lines in the field. Everything else we think we can do within there.
Yeah, I'm just, and I'm talking out of the sky, I know we just lost on election. That hurts. What's the right, is this the right way or is this a mandate based on funds?
This is Plan B.
Plan Plan B.
Whenever we talked about the bond, everybody kept asking, what's the alternative if the bond doesn't pass? Well, I don't wanna talk about the alternative at the point, because the bond was Plan A. But this has always been, Plan B. Is it as good as Plan A? Absolutely not. But is it as close, to perfect? Yes. Is it workable for a long-range plan? Absolutely.
Is it not feasible to go back and relook at that bond election with a different, a little bit more time to prepare, a little bit more time to go out there, and maybe get, well, marketing was, it was real hard for board members and talking with myself to get really motivated about what we were ultimately going to do with those monies. We all agreed that we needed the monies and we wanted to use it and we were going to do it the best way we could and we were going to plan carefully after we got through the election. But maybe if we had more time.
Well, I know that.
This isn't gonna happen around the school year, so.
We should go out for another bond election, but I think that the purpose of the bond election should be very limited in scope. And I think it should be only about the high school. And when we talked about this bond election, one of the issues that was the problem with it was that it was very complex, because it talked about all this redesign, and it talked about the high school, and talked about renovations to Buena Vista and Chavita, which were also extensive. So I absolutely know that we should go out for another bond election when we've had enough time to discuss it. But I think my recommendation, my strong recommendation, is that it only be a single issue bond election having to do exclusively with the high school.
Let's talk out of the box just because the 6th, 7th, and 8th. If you could take that campus, that population, and split that among 2 campuses, then that leaves, talking theory, build a north side middle school, you got a south side middle school that already exists. And then you turn your current 6th grade campus into Cardwell, and you just shut Cardwell down. And you do that north side middle school campus on modulation. Would that be a better long-term solution than and I know it's this, right? And what you're talking about is something that's if we can figure out how to manage money to make it happen, which is important to that too.
We talked about the possibility of building a second middle school, and the 3 reasons that keep coming over and over about why that may not be the best way to go. The first one is, if we had a high school that wasn't in need of improvement,
Yep.
then we could focus on building another middle school. But building, having extensive renovations to the existing high school, when we weigh it against having already a plan to fix a middle school, it just doesn't compete. We have to do the high school first. I don't think that this community will fix the high school and build another middle school bond all at once. Maybe when all the debt was reduced. So I would not recommend building another middle school knowing the needs of the high school. That's one. The second part, I think that when you look to incorporate 6th grade into the middle school, that addresses some of it, because obviously that middle school was built really big, and we don't wanna leave too much of it vacant. What we haven't talked about, and what nobody's asked, is what are you gonna do with the extra space once you move 600 kids to San Felipe Memorial? But what we checked with the bond attorney, and they said that after X amount of years, and we're at that point now, because that school was built with bond money, we could repurpose that for administrative offices. So for example, our special education and the other programs that are over there at the part of the annex and portables, we could use part of them for the services, which would be great, because then the kids have the services right there that we would need, special ed, bilingual, those sort of services. Having sixth grade there, that takes up some of that space, so that would work, that kind of washes away the concern. And then the second concern about having a separate middle school just had to do with, okay, so how are you gonna divide the town? Because obviously, it becomes messy. We do it just geographically, okay, fine, but it's always been an issue.
As it will be here how many times.
It will. So, but it would not be my recommendation to build another middle school.
You're, the shared, those shared activities still not chasing how that would work. What's the population if they those extracurricular activities? Like football and basketball and band and dance and whatever. What's the percentage of the population?
We have about 200 kids, boys, in the 7th grade year involved in athletics. That reduces a little bit to the 8th grade year. Girls is a little bit under 200, but dramatically decreases for their 8th grade year. Dance has increased. We have approximately 100 students involved in dance, 7th and 8th grade. Band also has approximately 200 students.
So you're, rough math, you're talking about at least 50% of your population. And managing that across, to have them on the same teams across two different campuses, or the same band across two different, are you talking about having two bands?
We're having two of everything, two bands. Obviously, the middle school, the magnet probably wouldn't have an A and a B team. It'd probably just have an A team or a blue team. But no, that's also a benefit, because
How much maybe not so, I don't know, I mean, then you become less competitive, maybe, I don't know, because you're gonna have a big pool. So does that knock us down a notch?
no, I think it's just the opposite. I think the coaches are very excited about it because it creates depth for the high school years. I know it's very complex,
Yeah, it is.
but
And I'm not saying I disagree with anything proposing here, just saying.
No, and it looks good, but there's a lot of things. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions on the student capacity for the Assembly of the World. What is it? 600?
no, it easily fits 725.
Okay. And the other one that I wanted to,
What's the number right now, 750 on the county? It is,
It's
750.
about 7, yeah.
about 700. And the other one was that, why the K to 3 and 4 to 6? Is that because of the age differences in students or what?
Part of it has to do with the age difference. K through 3 is obviously where you have your early literacy centers. Part of it has to do with the size of the campus. The older the kids, the smaller the campus you want it. So as they get into 4th, 5th, and 6th, you want a smaller campus so you have one reduced grade level. And then the third, it has to do with the actual size of the campus. We have, for example, Lonnie Green is much bigger than Buena Vista, so that can hold one more grade. North Heights is much bigger than what Carville will be redesigned for, so it can hold one more grade. Garfield is much bigger than Lamar, and so on.
Yeah, I figured something like that. And the other one that I wanted to ask you about, this one takes some time. I know you said about 2 years from now about it. Equal facilities. The Cardwell, do we plan on building a gym up there or something for the kids to?
That would be the goal if it's within the budget.
Yeah, because it would be the only campus without something facilities, PE type of thing.
That would be the goal, as it would be the goal to build a gym at Garfield. But we also have to remember that if the budget doesn't allow it, how long did Buena Vista
Oh, but
stay
you
without
have-
a gym also?
Garfield has a gym. You're talking about the one with the post,
Yes, sir.
but that's for K, ain't it?
Right, this would be
I mean,
pre-K,
Garfield-
so they would need a gym
Yeah.
also.
preschool comes in.
And what is that, Colorado, what is that out there, is that not suitable for the magnet?
We can always make it suitable for the magnet. If we wanted to have one basketball team, one football team, one band, we can make it suitable. We could improve the science lab there, for example, and make it suitable. But then the issue that we create is when we go to redistribute the students, you have sixth grade right between Lamar and Chavita. Yeah, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I can see the more participation from the kids as far as two junior highs, more of everything.
No, I don't disagree with the junior high, and it's the magnet piece of it. If you got two equal settings.
Yeah.
I wanted to share my opinion, after finding out the cost of repurposing Cardinal, Garfield, the problem still continues with the homes are going up north. So I don't think it will last too long before we would, again, have to be applying for waivers. I would like a long-term solution to the overcrowding, which would be a new elementary school. When we compare the amount that we're going to spend with both schools being repurposed, it doesn't make sense to me.
I think, if I may respond, the growth that we've seen in the district for the last few years, by last few years, I probably mean the last 10 years, has been 0.5% to 1%. So making room for 300 more elementary students with this type of setting is a long-term plan for the growth to the north. It absolutely is. Our growth has been 0.5% to 1% to the north. What we see a lot is, we see Dover growing in population to some degree, but we see a lot more families migrating to the north. That's why our growth in overall enrollment is so low. So given that growth, it is a long-term plan. It does provide for the growth to the north. And it fixes the middle school problem. And I know that there's a lot of details that we have questions on, but we've studied it. We studied the problem and we studied different solutions. And I would say that
You come up with a very creative solution. I just don't know if it's the best. And it's such a critical decision to make. I know the weight's on your shoulders, but we're gonna put it on your shoulders.
But here's the other part. Okay, I am the one presenting this to you, but I would also add that it wasn't I that came up with this alone. We had 2 facilities committees before this one. The idea of rearranging the elementary setting was birthed at one of those meetings. You know, we added the extra detail and using middle school as San Felipe as a magnet. You know, those were all things that came up through extensive discussions in committees. Some board members may have even participated in those committees in the past. So, I mean, it is creative, but it all didn't happen here. It happened with different input, from different decisions.
Well, Dr. Reyes, the way I see it, you know, like you said, stated just one, but this is plan B, because A didn't go. And we need to do something because the need is there. So this is why I think it's,
Didn't go, but I don't know that means we can't go at a different angle and go after it,
that would be great. Maybe,
But we wanted to add a footnote, in the midst of all this, we have Premier High School that has moved into that busy area that whatever happens in the next 2 years, the city has to do something to come up with an alternate outlet for lining, greening. It just, everything bottlenecks right there. Right behind what used to be administration building. Premier now is real close by. So there's gonna be more movement if we do this with the added congestion. Because we are gonna be moving, let's say, K through Third from Buena Vista going to Lon Green, and Fourth through Sixth going to Buena Vista, so there'll be a lot more movement.
I guess what I'm interpreting is that you're wanting to start asking to spend $50,000 on a plan that we're not solid on, I guess, is what
Well, it's a lot more than that, Mr. Smith. That is the first step.
yeah.
But if we were to get the grant approved, once we start spending on the grant, then we're committing to moving in that direction. So the $50,000 is,
That's the, I don't know if you want to call it the down payment, but.
yeah, that's a down payment, but once we accept the grant, then it's down payment with intention to buy. I don't,
I'm really excited about the fact that we come up with some creative ways to do it. I just struggle with it. That you, by the time you get that, 50 grand spent, it's done, it's over with. It's either you use the fact that it's designed, or we're not stuck on the concept and we say, oh, okay, let's go back, and then it becomes waste.
no, once we spend the 50 grand, the architect that we select, that we're gonna pay the 50 grand, they're the ones that are gonna carry the project through.
Yeah, but that's if we decide to finally do it. Right now, I'm still stuck here. I'm not even here yet.
Well, you're right, if we spent the 50 grand and did not get the grant, then, yeah, it could be money wasted. That's why, very respectfully, that's why I shared this with y'all, an extensive document that I shared with y'all about 2 months ago. And then, so we're ready to move forward, but I obviously can't move forward without y'all being okay with it.
Yeah, I think that, respectful back to you, I raised the same flags 2 months ago, so I'll take my flag different.
Are you ready for the next one?
Well, the next slide is on the grant, yeah. I'm ready when y'all are ready.
That's fine.
Good evening, Ms. Haynes, Dr. Rios, members of the board. So, the next few slides I'll be able to explain what the grant was, how it came about, and part of the criteria that goes with it. So you'll see there at the very top that it talks about elementary and middle school redesign plan 2017 to 19. It's a 2-year plan. School redesign grant pilot cycle. This is a federal grant. It's a 211 funding. So this isn't something that, you know, just is a random grant. There's going to be criteria for who can apply for it, but you'll see that the purpose of it is not just because of something we need here in Del Rio. You'll see that the federal government has put some money aside to help districts. So the purpose of the grant is to assist districts with a supported approach to planning and implementing. It's a 2-step program. There's a planning stage and an implementation stage. School redesign plans, and these are for Title I low-performing schools. They provide opportunities for districts to create new and improved learning environments that will substantially increase student achievement. So again, those are some key words. They have to be new. It can't just be something that we just want to go fix. It has to be a new approach, and you're going to see that throughout the grant. Who is eligible? The reason that we're eligible is that districts with a campus that was identified as a priority school or a focus school back in 2016-17, and are not currently a TIPS campus this year can actually qualify. Del Rio Middle School was a priority campus last year in 2016-17. Therefore, we have a school in the district that qualifies it, and they are not receiving any Title I TIPS money this year. So that's how we qualify for it. You'll see that the school redesign is a comprehensive and bold approach by districts to increase the number of students in highly rated schools through a supported implementation of a school redesign, taking those from low performing schools. So it's like a shift is what it's looking for. And that's why the plan that Dr. Rose talks about, moving students, is what we're trying to do. We're trying to make all our schools that top priority school. Exceptional applicants will present a strong plan for a school redesign supported by a school redesign partner. That was one of the criterions. We had to research who's out there that actually does work with students. It can't just be something that we wish. It has to be research-based. There has to be people out there who have done it, who are proven. So for instance, one of the researchers that we looked at was the Institute for Research and Reform in Education. Lots of background, lots of documentation, where they have come in and helped schools transform into new reformed schools. The school redesign must incorporate one or more evidence-based strategies for school improvement. That's another criterion. By that, I guess I should say it's a 36-page document, and each one of those we had to provide support. So if we get the grant, it's because we provided the right support, the right information in there. You'll see that part of the evidence-based strategies we're using, we're going to implement the critical success factors that TA puts out. We're going to implement the 7 turnaround principles. Those are key factors in every successful turnaround program that we've heard of. There's further criteria. The applicant must describe how it will use the school improvement funds in the eligible campus to plan and effectively implement, again, two processes that we'll look at in a moment, the school redesign in alignment with one of the following school redesign models. So there were only 3 choices for this grant. The 3 choices were you could restart your program. You could literally restart the school. But that means you had to close the low-performing school, you close it down, open a new school as a charter school. So we're not interested in that because our district is not going to have a charter school. So that we didn't qualify for. The second one was a turnaround opportunity, and that's where you identify a new school principal or a leader, and you make comprehensive changes in the staff and the instructional model. And then the third one is closure or consolidation. You close a low-performing school and you enroll students in a different school. So we applied for the turnaround school. We have a new principal at Del Rio Middle School. In addition, we have 3 assistant principals at this time, possibly a 4th, an entire new leadership team. We have the 90-minute block scheduling. That is the new instructional model that we've been preparing for that for 2 years. So we definitely qualify for the second option. Now here you'll see, we anticipate that 5 to 10 grants will be awarded, ranging from $250,000 to $1.5 million. Of course, we applied for the max, $1.5 million, and you'll see it broken down into the different class object codes, 6100, 6200, 63, 64, and 66. And earlier I had mentioned that there was a planning, that's year 1, and then implementation would be year 2. So just to give you an idea, when you look at
5 to 10 across the nation, across the state.
across all, the state,
So it's
And
a
it's-
federal grant based on the state.
yes, sir. And we have had some of those before, like the TIPS grants, where the federal government will give the state money and then through an application process, schools can get them. Now, we have had a TIPS grant, a priority grant, and a focus grant since 2011. So we're very hopeful that we'll also qualify for this one. So you'll see in payroll costs, it'll give you options. You can hire a grant coordinator, a project coordinator that's gonna manage the grant and ensure that the implementation of the curriculum and so forth goes through. You'll see professional and contracted services. The cost of having that partner that we were talking about, that research institute, would come straight from the grant. It allows us to pay for those kinds of things because of course it wants us to be successful. It wants those applicants to be successful. Supplies and materials, other operation costs, capital outlay. It allows us to have all the technology that we need. So we put in funds for computers, laptops, smart boards, so that it would be, again, state-of-the-art, top-performing school. 1.5 million is all budgeted in there as to what we can do with it, and that's where the cost comes in. The feasibility study would also come out of that, the one that Dr. Rose was talking about. If we got the money awarded, the grant itself would pay for it. The timeline, the application was due on July the 13th. They will look at it through the 8th, and they will be notifying districts from the 14th through the 25th of August. So it was a quick turnaround. Ms. Hernandez and Dr. Rios presented it to cabinet. Everybody worked diligently. And I agree, the process was very enlightening because there was a planning stage and an implementation stage. Unlike, I'll just give you an example, when you get a TIPS grant, it comes to you and you kind of say, okay, I have the money, what are we gonna do with it? This one actually, you had to plan for it in advance. What would you do? What would if you were awarded the money? The beginning date for the grant would be August 28th of 2017. It would be this year. We'd start with curriculum. We would start with, everything that we said that was in there, we would start with that.
Still provided we get the grant.
So that's, in a nutshell, the grant that we applied for. Like I said, it was a quick turnaround. All the components were in there, but that's pretty much the gist of it. You had to qualify for it. You had to pick one of the three. You had to qualify for one of the three, and we did qualify for turnaround.
We're hopeful that we'll be competitive in this grant for a couple of reasons. One, we've done grants like this before, and we won them when we do them ourselves, and it just really reflects the needs of the district. That's one. Two, because of the short-term awareness of the grant and the very few people that would qualify to apply for this grant, not too many people would apply for it. Third, the deadline fell right the week after that 4th of July week when everybody's gone. So we're hoping that a lot of them didn't work as hard as we did to get this done. So based on our success and just based on the shortness of the time frame, we could be successful. I think that in closing, here's what I would share with the board. These innovative ideas, I know they're difficult, but here's something that I want y'all to consider. Nothing that we've done in the last 4 years is something that we've created ourselves, that we haven't seen work somewhere else. Redesigning high school instruction is something that was well studied in other districts across the country, that I saw myself was participated in and was able to share with other key members in the district. So I didn't go down that venture all on my own. It was something that had been well studied and implemented by somebody else. Having middle school bands is something that other districts have done. Redesigning elementaries is something that other districts are doing right now. When we came up, I'll give you an example. When we came up with the idea of doing the blended academy, it passed on a split vote. But when we look at the success it's had now, this coming year will be enrolling 230 students that wouldn't have otherwise been successful. It's successful not because not because we invented it no, it's successful because it had been successful in other districts. It isn't, we weren't the first guys that tried it. Same thing with early college high school, same thing with the CTE center. Other districts had done variations of it, and we studied those districts, and we replicated and improved on something of what they had done. So this middle school redesign plan, it is very bold, but it isn't something that we're just flipping the coin and see if it worked. I've studied it, I've been part of it in other districts, and we're not gonna just say, let's try this, see if it's worked. It's been implemented elsewhere. And I think that we've proven that every program that we've done, now granted, this will be the boldest, but we've proven that everything we've done hasn't fallen short of expectations. So, it's kinda hard to just say, okay, trust me, but I'm saying, trust me based on experiences that other districts have had. I'm not taking a stab in the dark.
I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I think you put a lot of thought into it. So I'm just, not much more at all.
Man, that concludes our presentation. If there's any other questions we have tonight.
Are there any questions? Should I submit some comments? Okay. We are now
The
number.
only thing is, instead of question, Dr. I'm glad that you're on the ball, trying to come out with new ideas and, or even though, they, like you said, other people have done it, and the tempo you're headed to it, and you're right. To me, it's successful, all the things that's been presented, so I'm game. I think that we need to pursue it and not just hang around and see what's gonna happen. I'm glad that the grant might, what was it you wanted to vote on? August?
August or September. I'll just have to have more individual conversations with different board members and see where we're at, whether that's approved.
Yeah, so we should know, mid-August, whether we're approved or not.
All right, we had number 5, open meeting. And now it's number 6, public hearings. There are no items for this meeting. Oh, sorry, Dr. Rios, thank you for guiding us through this workshop, along with the prisoners as well. Thank you. Public hearings, there's no items for this meeting. Board members report, there's no items. Number 8 and number 9, there's no items for this meeting. Number 10, there's no items for this meeting. And now we're at number 11, curriculum and instruction. A, consideration to approve contract over $5,000 to Stetson Associates Company in the amount of $6,838.38 for block scheduling professional development for secondary schools. Ms. Gomez.
Good evening, Ms. Haynes, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. Tonight I bring the contract consideration before you for recommendation. It is for block scheduling with Stetson. Stetson is the same consultant that has been guiding us throughout the entire spring on block scheduling. It's the same consultant that has talked to us about the allocated time, and then it's between the 90, I guess, bell to bell, 90-minute session. She would be coming back to train all secondary teachers during the week of August, our regular staff development week. And this would give them the specific strategies, differentiated instructional models, and the lesson planning that they've been asking for. And by that I mean, we ask all campuses to please give us a list of what staff needs they need. And secondary unanimously asked for more 90-minute block scheduling, staff development, I should say. So they're looking for activities, they're looking, how are they gonna fill the 90-minute block, and that's what this contract is for. Are there any questions?
Yes, is it gonna do anything to the number of number of teachers that you need? Is it gonna affect the time or the
Actually,
start and the end of the school day?
yes, sir. All the secondary campuses have submitted their bell schedules. We are starting just a little bit later, about 8:15 for the norm. We're ending about 3:30, 3:35 at most campuses. So it actually shortened the day a little bit. As far as needing more staff, no. The principals have worked very hard to look at the different sessions that the teachers have to teach throughout the day. And we have not increased the staff at secondary
how many-
because
How
of
many,
90-minute block.
how many courses would a subject, would student take during one semester? First and second semester?
They still have an 8-period day. It's just instead of having 8 per one day, it's 4 and 4.
That's what I feel, I just wanted to make.
Yes, sir. It's the same amount of classes. They're just broken up into 4 90-minute
You take,
periods.
so many courses first semester and finish it, and then you take the other one?
Yes. It would just be an
Yeah.
A-B day.
Okay.
And they've written all their curriculum based on the calendars.
Yeah, I like them, I've always liked
One time.
yeah.
Mr. Mesa?
Yes, sir.
I have a question in regard to special programs like ROTC. How would it affect ROTC?
We've actually, Mr. Mesa, met with all the departments. We met with ROTC, athletics, band, and that includes the principals, the different cabinet members depending, some directors like Michelle Smith. And actually, it all worked out. Nobody came through with ROTC and said, oh, I'm not able to do it. Everybody, we either blocked it, we had the 0 period before, if you have those type courses where you have to meet every day. So we do offer those type
So
options.
it will not limit students from enrolling in ROTC?
No, sir. And not from what I've spoken to those, command, I don't know their lieutenant, I'm not sure of their names, their titles, I'm sorry, I apologize. But we have met with them, they actually submitted their schedules to us and said, this is what we need, this is where we need breaks, this is where we need, the actual
Would it be
sections.
possible to look at enrollment numbers once we start, just to see the conflicts? And I'm talking about, let's say ROTC, I'm interested in ROTC because I would not want to limit the number of students that would be able to participate.
At the end of the day, we're still offering 8 classes to everybody. So you wouldn't have any more conflicts than what you already have because you have 8 classes. Now, I will tell you, in reference to ROTC, they've been under the microscope because they've had added personnel, and over the past few years, they have not maintained the enrollment, whether it's because of recruitment or just more competition from other programs. Athletics continues to grow, for example. Fine arts continues to grow with the dance teams. So there's more people competing for the students. So ROTC over the past few years has had reduced numbers, and the last audit that they had this past year, they shared with us, either the enrollment goes up or we will fund one less instructor. But it has nothing to do with block scheduling. It has everything to do with the fact that the other programs are growing and you just have to be more competitive. We have seen a tremendous growth in athletics and fine arts in the last 5 years. And our population hasn't grown, so where do they, well, less kids in ROTC.
No, I'm just interested in, to make sure that students are not kept from enrolling in ROTC.
And just to answer, we did meet with all the departments.
I guess another alternative for the students that have problem with the schedule is that they can take some of the courses during the summer, wouldn't it? Like Spanish or something like that?
Certain courses they can, yes, sir. And of course, early college high school is expanding their dual credits. We're constantly expanding, constantly
I'm talking about
looking.
the kids that are in band and then athletics or cheerleading or something like that. There's always a conflict, but they can work it out and take some courses in the summer or something.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions? Recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve for the superintendent to sign a contract with Stetson and Associates, Inc. in the amount of $6,838.
So,
Mr. Irene? Any second? Mr. Smith? All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we are number 12, facilities and operations. There's no items for this meeting, business and finance, there's none as well. We have human resources and student services. A, consideration to approve revised administrative job classification listing.
And
evening, Ms. Garcia.
Good evening, Ms. Haynes, Dr. Rios, members of the board. As we evaluate the needs of the district, we would like to recommend to delete the position of Director of Operations and add Construction Manager and Director of Transportation. These positions have been in existence before, so we do have the job descriptions. However, if you do approve them, we will bring them, the next board meeting, regular board meeting on August 24th, if there will be any revisions that need to be included. Any questions?
Questions? No. Recommendation, please.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the administration job classification changes be approved as presented.
Is there a motion? Mr. Smith? Second by Mr. Shuffler, all in favor? We are unanimous, thank you.
Thank you.
Number 15, technology services, there are no items to this evening. We're at 16, closed session. If during the course of any duly posted meeting, the Board of Trustees determines that a closed or executive session is required regarding an item posted on the agenda, that session will be held on any or all subjects and purposes permitted by sections 551-071, 551-072, 551-073, 551-074, 551-076, 551-082, 551-084, 551-087 of the Government Code, Texas Open Meetings Act. If a final vote is required on any matter considered in a closed or executive session, it shall be taken either upon the convening of the public session covered by this notice, or at a subsequent duly posted public meeting as the board shall determine. A, pursuant to 551-074, discussion of personnel or to hear complaints against personnel, and 551-071, private consultation with the board's attorney. Number 1, discussion of personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements, resignations, reassignments. Number 2, discussion of salary adjustments to include but not limited to the following justifications: service credit, master's degree stipends, salary matrix adjustment. The time is now 7:44, and we are in closed session. It is now 8:13. No votes and no action was taken in closed session. We are now in open session. We will be at 17A, consideration to approve the personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements, and resignations. Ms. Aidez Garcia.
Hello again. It is the recommendation of the administration that the following new hires be approved as presented: Elida Ramirez, Blended Academy; Megan McKenna, Buena Vista; Timothy Garza, Dr. Fermin Calderon; Adrian Pittman, Del Rio Freshman School; Owen Cardenas, Del Rio Freshman School; Ana Leticia Hernandez, Del Rio Freshman School; Calixca Perez, Del Rio Freshman School; Estela Zaragoza, Del Rio High School; Nicolas Velasquez, Del Rio High School as EMT teacher; Eloy Garcia, Del Rio High School as an ELA teacher; Jasmine Hobbs, Del Rio Middle School as the assistant athletic trainer; Bobby Joe Guerra, Del Rio Middle School ELA teacher; Dolores Cowan, Del Rio Middle School social studies teacher; Hector Mayfield, Early College High School business dual credit teacher; Adalberto Gallegos, Early College High School chemistry teacher; Chelsea Lujan, Garfield as a 3rd grade teacher; Hilda Barrera, Garfield 5th grade bilingual teacher; Laura Garcia, Garfield Elementary interventionist; Wendy Torres, Irene Cardwell, pre-K teacher; Santa Isabel Aguinua, Lonnie Green, 3rd grade bilingual teacher; Cheryl Hunter, Lonnie Green, music teacher; Blanca Osuna, North Heights special education teacher;
Melissa Sandoval, Ruben Chavira, third grade teacher, and Roxana Ortega, SGLC, social studies teacher.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve all new hires? Mr. Mesa, second by Mr. President. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have letter B.
There's nothing further personal report on that.
Thank you, sir. 18, superintendent's report. There's no items for this meeting. 19, adjournment. Motion, Mr. Mesa. Second by Mr. Smith. All in favor? So now we meeting adjourned. The time is